Theodore Bickel.
Sitting down would help. Shh. Shah. Shh. Shah. Erev Tov. Good evening and welcome to this concluding event of the J Street Conference and to this celebration honoring Davidi Gilo. Dear friends, what has brought us together is an abiding love for Israel's well-being and the shared conviction that only peace will ensure its survival, peace with its neighbors and peace with itself. Ours is not a naive gathering of utopian do-gooders. We are aware of the obstacles and of the hard and sometimes painful decisions that are required on the road to peace. We are neither misguided, nor do we have an agenda that is hostile to Israel. Quite the contrary. We have never made common cause with those who maintain that Israel can do nothing right. By the same token, we reject those who espouse the notion that Israel can do no wrong. The notion of my Israel right or wrong recalls the old American slogan of my country right or wrong. Now that one was aptly refuted over 100 years ago by a senator and former general who declared my country right or wrong indeed, when right to be kept right and when wrong to be put right. There are those in the Jewish community who question our credentials as Zionists and worse, our legitimacy as Jews. I am here to say to them that we do not need permission slips from anyone in order to be included in the Jewish tent. When we see flaws and demand that they be corrected, we love Israel more, not less. I wonder how the naysayers would have classified the prophet Jeremiah, who exhorted the people of Israel, "They dress the wound of my people as though it were not serious. Shalom, shalom, ve'ein shalom." Peace, peace, they mouth, and yet there is no peace. Well, I'm serious about peace, very serious. Not only for Israel and her neighbors, but everywhere. Tamara and I have worked for peace separately and together in many places, using the tools that are available to us. We made music with groups, enemies and former enemies to each other, who are hardly able to talk to each other. But what they could do is make music together. At times, we call this effort Hagesher LaShalom, Most Dopokoyu, a bridge to peace. Christians and Muslims from Bosnia, Estonians and Russians, Gypsy Roma and Hungarians, Cypriot Greeks and Turks. We had them sing and play each other's music. And they ended up singing the song of peace, taught to them in one of the languages of our people, Yiddish, this song. Ya ba ba bye ba bye ba ba bum. Ya ba ba bye ba bye ba ba bum. Ya bye 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 bum. Bye bum bye bum bye bum. Wollt ihr gehat koyach? Wollt ihr gelaufen in die Gassen? Wollt ihr geschrien heuch? Sholem, sholem, sholem. If I had strength and vigor, I'd find the words and call them. With a voice grown big and bigger, I would call out, Sholem, Sholem. Wollt ihr gehabt Keuer, wollt ihr gelaufen in die Gassen, wollt ihr geschrien heuer, Scholem, Scholem, Scholem. I'm a lifelong Zionist, as was my father before me. Poalei Zion was the watchword in our home. Hebrew poetry was recited and Hebrew songs were sung. 6 months after the Nazis invaded Austria, we escaped to the Yishuv in British Mandate Palestine. My days in the kibbutz were not memorable. Even then, culture was my bent, not agriculture. I stood on heaps of manure, singing songs about the beauty of the work that I wasn't doing. Since then, I've carried the Jewish song into unlikely places, dangerous places, as well as exalted ones. The Song of Hope, Hatikva, was a good anthem for the Zionist movement. However, as a national anthem for a state, many of whose citizens are non-Jews, it is problematic. This issue may need to be resolved, but Israelis and American Jews should know that the Song of Hope has value only when it's preceded by the Song of Peace.
על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק, על ביתנו התינוקת, שמור לי הטוב, על האש המבוערת, על המים הזכים, על האיש השב הביתה מן המרחקים, על כל אלה, שמור נא לי אלי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק, על נטע הקור נטוע, אל תשכח את התקווה, השיבני ואשובה אל הארץ הטובה. Every bee that brings the honey needs a sting to be complete, and we all must learn to taste the bitter with the sweet. Keep, O Lord, the fire burning through the night and through the day, for the man who is returning from so far away. Don't uproot what has been planted, so our bounty may increase. Let our dearest wish be granted. Bring us peace, oh bring us peace. Al nata akor natua, al tishkach et hatikva, hashiveni va'ashuva el haaretz hatova. מרשרש אילן ברוח, מרחוק נושר כוכב, משאלות ליבי בחושך נרשמות עכשיו. אנא שמור לי על כל אלה, ועל אהובי נפשי, על השקט, על הבכי, ועל זה השיר, על כל אלה, שמור נא לי אלי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק. As the wind makes rustling night sounds and a star falls in its arc, all my dreams and my desires make crystal shapes out of the dark. Guard for me, O Lord, these treasures, all my friends keep safe and strong. Guard the stillness, guard the weeping, guard the singer and the song. Al kol ele, shmor na li אלי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק. For the sake of all these things, Lord, let your mercy be complete. Bless the sting and bless the honey, bless the bitter and the sweet.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Vice Chair of J Street's Education Fund, Kathleen Paratis.
Hello, everybody. I guess I've been introduced. It's my privilege to be here and to give you a short introduction to Anat Hoffman, one of these wonderful people in our lives who probably needs no introduction, but it's my privilege to introduce her. Anat burst onto the public stage in Jerusalem when she was not much older than many of these hundreds of spectacular young people who are here at this conference these last 2 days. She had just graduated from UCLA, and she asked Uri Regev, who was then the head of the Israel Religious Action Center, for a job, which he wisely gave to her. Her first project was to create a citizens hotline, way before citizens hotlines were fashionable. Anat offered her hotline to the citizens of Israel, and she named it "Call Us When You Are Right." This proved to be irresistible to Israelis, who tend to think they are right. So the calls came in by the dozens, and then by the hundreds, and then by the many hundreds. And what Anat realized is that many of the callers from people of all walks of life complained about the Israel telephone company, the monopoly telephone company, Bezek. And one of the things they complained about was that Bezek sent a bill that was one line. You owe us 800 shekels. You owe us 87 shekels, with no detail. And people wanted to know what they were paying for. They wanted itemized bills. Is this my bill? What have I paid for long distance? And Bezek paid no attention. So Anat, on their behalf, went to Bezek and said, you got to give people itemized bills. And Bezek thought they could flick away Anat like a little fly. That was a big mistake. Anat organized a group that she called the Afflicted Citizens Association. Eventually, this campaign that Anat launched resulted in the resignation of the General Secretary of Bezek, in breaking up the monopoly, and in Israelis getting itemized phone bills. So that's chapter one of Anat's first stage on the public scene in Israel. She then went on to serve in the Jerusalem City Council for 15 years, butting heads not infrequently with then Mayor Ehud Olmert, and she may tell us something about that, or perhaps Prime Minister Olmert will do so. I hope one of them will say more about it. Then in 2002, and with Olmert's support and respect, Anat became the head of the Israel Religious Action Center. In this role, and also as head of the Women of the Wall, Anat has emerged as the embodiment of all of the reasons that the 1,000 people in this room and millions beyond have hope for the future of Jerusalem and of Israel. Israel is a place, and there are many such places, where too many people don't remember that everything you really need to know you learned in kindergarten. Anat remembers that, and she makes sure that everyone has a voice and a chance, and no one is crushed. In the metaphor of the conference, Barack Obama may have Israel's back, but Anat Hoffman has Israel's front. Anat walks the walk every day. I want to give you a couple of examples. When Anat first started hearing a few years ago that women were being coerced into literally going to the back of the bus on certain municipal bus lines, she herself began riding the buses. She rode them, she subjected herself to taunts and threats, and sometimes more than that, and she gathered allies little by little until she started the Freedom Ride movement for gender equality and to oppose religious coercion in Jerusalem. Another example. At the Kotel also, women are second-class citizens. Actually, second class would be a promotion. But no wall, not even the Kotel, is too high for Anat. As chair of Women of the Wall, she has engaged in the criminal activity of carrying a Torah and praying while female. For which she has been roughed up and arrested and subjected to further abuse. Freedom rides and arrests at the wall for praying, civil rights and activism don't get any better than this. Anat gives you all the reasons you ever needed to love and to care about Israel. And one final example. I asked a few friends to give me Anat stories. And a few days ago, Yossi Klein Halevi, who is a very well-known commentator in Israel, sent me this. He said, during one of Saddam Hussein's scares here, maybe it was the first Gulf War, hard to sort one threat from another, gas masks were distributed, but not to Palestinians in the West Bank. Anat gave away her gas mask to a Palestinian friend because that was only fair. And that, says Yossi, that is Anat in a single story. The managing director of Bezek, the policemen who arrest her, the bus drivers who threaten her, have learned that Anat is not a little fly and she cannot be flicked away. She's brave and inspirational. She's also a shrewd political operator. She envisions what needs to happen, and she knows how to make it happen. I have a dream. I have a dream that one day Anat Hoffman will be a candidate for President of the State of Israel. Whether this is a dream or a forecast, I don't know for sure, but of this I am sure. As a feminist, Anat will always have our back. As a Zionist, an aspirational Jew, as the one who holds the lamp of justice, she will have our front, and we will be with her in enthusiastic support, in boundless friendship, and in great respect. My friends, Anat Hoffman.
Yeah, I can get elected in this room. Yes, I am a troublemaker, and it's wonderful to be here. I went through the duty-free, and I had to contemplate the state of duty-free and wonder if Jews can ever be duty-free. And then I crossed the street here, and I saw how much I can accomplish in 17 seconds, how those lights here, they tell you 18, 14, 13, and cross the street. And I never heard so many people who are not Bedouins talk about a tent as being here. Many of you I don't know, but I'm not worried, because in Israel, when I don't know someone and he says I look familiar, I'm always worried that I sued him. And it looks like you are just nice. I came to America as a swimmer. I unfortunately failed high school in Israel, but I was Israel's swimming champion, and my American accent, to the extent that I have it, is a function of going to UCLA, and who couldn't care less about my grades. But the times in the 100 and 200 freestyle and 200, 400 medley, and I have an American education. I was kicking and screaming. I went to learn American government and Constitution, and I'm very moved to be in Washington and see the Lincoln Memorial and read the Gettysburg Address. This is really a fantastic visit to here. I'm one of the new criminals that Stav Shafir talked about on the first evening, in that the Jerusalem police, in its wisdom, established that I was carrying a Torah with the intent to read. And it's likely that I may do it again. The wall is an interesting place. It's where Israelis actually gave the keys to the holiest site to a minority group in Judaism, and that minority group, having the state funding behind it and the state power behind it, has abused the place. This continues because Israelis don't care. Many Israelis think it's the ultimate discotheque for the ultra-Orthodox, and you are awfully quiet about this. And it's time you used your wonderful nuisance value and started making trouble over this. I can see that there could be a first bat mitzvah at the wall. I'm really hoping that the Hadassah women who are coming to Israel to celebrate their 100th birthday, 2,000 strong, with their talitot and sifrei Torah, let's see the Jerusalem police tackle 2,000 Hadassah women. I'd love to see that. The first bus in Jerusalem that was segregated between men and women was the bus going to and from the wall. And in the beginning, secular Israelis felt that, well, since it serves the ultra-Orthodox community, why not? Then it spread to quite a few lines across Israel, to the point that there were 2,500 rides every day where women are sitting in the back of the bus, men are in the front of the bus. We went to the Supreme Court representing brave Orthodox women who were saying that this is unacceptable to them. In fact, it opened our minds to the idea that black comes in many shades, and many Orthodox women refuse to sit in the back of the bus. They're not one monolithic community. So we had the long time at the Supreme Court. Then there was a committee headed by that was appointed by the Minister of Transportation. Then the committee heard 1,500 testimonies. Some of them said that it's safer to sit in the back of the bus. And in fact, segregated buses have less accidents. But Then the minister refused to accept the recommendation of his own committee when the committee said that it's illegal to segregate a bus in Israel. And then the Supreme Court made a decision that this sign has to be in all Israeli buses. It says, due to Supreme Court petition 47607, people can sit anywhere they wish on a bus. Anyone harassing a person, anybody harassing a person for sitting on a bus is guilty of a felony. Well, as you know, Israelis don't adhere to signs. And even though this is hanging in every bus, the segregation continued. In fact, when an Israeli sees a sign that says fresh paint, the first thing an Israeli does is just to make sure he's not a sucker. Is it really fresh paint or not? So we started the Freedom Rides, where we asked Israeli volunteers who wore stickers that say, "How am I dressed? 1-800, none of your business." Or "Shev ata me'achor." And then you joined, and we have a full-time person having you guys, and I'm inviting all of you, come to Israel and be a Freedom Rider. We can have all of you on buses. Tell us how much time you have, and you will ride a bus. And you will leave a room next to you for a woman, an Orthodox woman, to sit next to you, and we will change it one bus at a time. I love your President Jefferson. I think that I heard that when Kennedy had a breakfast for all the Nobel Prize laureates in the United States in the White House, he was asked, well, isn't that the most brain power ever in the White House? He said, well, maybe, except when Jefferson had breakfast on his own. Jefferson said that in religion, it's the opposite than in politics. In politics, united we stand, divided we fall. But in religion, divided we stand, united we fall. And when we look at the blossoming of religion in the United States, how right he was and how wrong we are in Israel to actually give religion to one voice, one minority voice, the Orthodox. I don't think that Orthodoxy is corrupt in any way innately, but it's the first time in Jewish history that there is the power and the funding of the state behind one faction of Judaism. We've always had arguments. The first Jew, Abraham, had an argument with his new God. That's the first thing he does. And we are an argumentative people. And Ehud, Olmert sitting here, boy, we've had our arguments day in and day out, and yet these arguments are the Jewish sport. And if we ever had the Olympics in Jerusalem, that would be the sport we add. But all these healthy arguments that throughout Jewish history ended in Israel when the state backs only one faction. There is only one product on the shelf, and that's orthodoxy. One of the very disturbing things we see now is that among the 4,000 state-paid rabbis in Israel, 49 are engaged in racist incitement. We have published a report, Love the Stranger as Yourself, ? It's on our website. I work for an organization called, it's a very sad acronym, IRAC, Israel Religious Action Center. You might know Rabbi David Saperstein, the head of the RAC, who's right here. So IRAC published this report, and it looks at how the state of Israel turns a blind eye to these 49 rabbis. And even though they are regularly inciting against the Israeli Arab, who is 21% of our population, Israeli citizens saying to people, don't rent an apartment to them, don't employ them, don't allow them to fraternize with Jewish women. And worst of all, a book called Torat HaMelech that says that we can kill the non-Jew because he may grow up to be the enemy. These are unacceptable things, Jewishly, halachically, morally, ethically. Chutzpah, it's got to end. So I see a fist of religious coercion above the heads of people at the wall, Israelis of all sorts. That clenched fist is something we've got to work on. One of the problems is that a recent study shows that Israelis think of the Shoah every day. Every day there is a Shoah moment. When you're in line with other people to get soup, when your feet or hands are cold, when a baby is crying and you're not very close to drinks or food, when trains come and go, when you hear the German language, when you see a cubby hole and you think, can a kid fit in there? These are Israelis, third, fourth generation in Israel, and still a Shoah moment every day. The Shoah has turned into an all-encompassing religion, in some ways replacing Zionism and a healthy understanding of what it is to be an Israeli patriot. So this is an important point. So I would like to relate to a pasuk that says, "Le'olam yitpalel adam bevayit sheyesh bo chalonot." A person should always pray in a place that has windows. We should always be looking out and also having others look in. You can't pray in a bunker. You can't put yourself in 2012 in a bunker and think you are in the 40s of the last century. So since it's the eve of Pesach, I am applauding you for asking the ultimate question, She'elat HaShe'elot, why not? The most important Jewish question, why not? It's time we felt your voice, we felt your nuisance value, and it's time to take this fist that is all over Israel and put it where it belongs, over the Jewish heart. That's where it belongs. The Jewish heart and the Jewish fist belong with each other on Yom Kippur, and they belong together all year long. This is where it belongs, not over women at the wall, not over converts that are newcomers to Israel, not over all these things where the Jewish fist is hanging, but over the Jewish heart. So don't lose heart. Have a wonderful dinner. I'm delighted to be here. And if anyone has questions or arguments or anything to do, I am in table 9, and I would be delighted to hear from every one of you. Toda rabah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the co-chair of J Street PAC, Victor Kovner. Good to see you, my friend.
It is an honor to welcome to J Street the number 2 official in the Israel Embassy, Deputy Head of Mission, Ambassador Baruch Bina. As most of you know, J Street has launched a respectful, open dialogue with the government of Israel through the embassy here in Washington and in Israel as well. We have been grateful that Ambassador Michael Oren has maintained an open line of communication with us. We believe it is in the vital interests of the global Jewish community and the State of Israel that the pro-Israel tent include those who may not see eye to eye with the government of Israel on every point. And it is important to note, even as there are critical points of disagreement, occasionally profound disagreement, there is so much as well on which we agree, as we all work to ensure a secure and peaceful future for Israel and its neighbors. Ambassador Bina has spent decades of outstanding service in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and at the end of last year became the senior deputy to Ambassador Oren at the embassy. He has devoted a lifetime of service to the State of Israel, including several tours of duty in the United States, here in Washington, and as Israel's Consul General in Chicago. Please join me in welcoming to J Street the official representative of the State of Israel, Ambassador Baruch Binah.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you all for inviting me to speak to you tonight. You know, I have to make a small confession. I've been here in this job now 2 months, and it's the first public appearance I make in the United States in my current position. So I consider it a privilege and an honor to bring to you some of our thoughts. 65 years ago, there could not have been a Jewish ambassador representing the Jewish state, speaking to a Jewish audience in a flourishing and confident diaspora. Today, I come before you, my friends, to greet and congratulate you on your third conference and to discuss our common goals and possible disagreements. Our story has always been exciting and unexpected, but in the last 150 years or so, we have astonished and surprised even ourselves. We rose from the ghettos of East Europe and from the Mellah of North Africa to create a dynamic, resourceful, and vibrant democracy in an unusually hostile and oppressive region. Nobody is perfect. As a seventh-generation Israeli born, I know full well what needs to be fixed in my own society. I salute those individuals and organizations working for grassroots improvement within Israel, and I personally attempt some corrections every 4 years when I cast my vote. Sometimes I have it my way, sometimes I do not. You know, it's called democracy. I understand that you, my friend, are all about future and hope. So are we, the young and most energetic country that we are. But while our view is always towards the future, we dare not forget our past. History must not shackle us, but its lessons must guide us. And please, please, do not tell me that it is no longer relevant, because it is. It is alive and scorching, just like the trail left by an Israeli Air Force F-16 flown over Poland's valleys of death by the granddaughter of the commanders of a ghetto revolt. It is alive in ink and paper, as long as a 12-year-old, an 8th generation Israeli-born, dedicates her bat mitzvah book to, and I quote her, members of my family whom I never known, though I can assure you that nobody coached her in this direction. We look today to our two flourishing communities in Israel and here in the United States. Each shoulders an historic and current responsibility for the survival of the Jewish people. Our relations are therefore of the utmost importance, and we must guide them with principles that will ensure our partnership. I come to you today not only as the second-ranking Israeli diplomat in the United States, but as a brother, and personally I do have an extensive American family, especially in this town. We share your democratic values, but unlike your secure existence between these happy shores, an ocean apart from the bad guys, our borders are curved and dusty and made of missiles and mayhem. And as we continue to face intolerable threats, we sometimes have to make decisions of life and death. We welcome the opinions of our brethren, our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, especially on issues of Jewish identity and pluralism. But at the end of the day, it is we, the Israelis, who must bear the ultimate burden and may have to pay the ultimate price. I know you've heard it before. But we, dear friends and family, have no margins of error, none whatsoever. So we need you to stand with us. It is as simple as that. And someone ought to say it. Internal activism is a central part of democratic society. But pressures on the elected government of Israel can present us with a problem when, and I'll say a word in Hebrew, davka, when we need you the most. In this spirit of democracy and openness, I have to broach an issue with you. For J Street is not just an NGO that publishes a magazine and states an opinion in the free market of ideas. It is an organization that lobbies Congress. You practice not only free speech, but a legislative agenda. You don't only publish op-eds, you bring members of Congress to the region. I respectfully submit that this relatively new role lays responsibilities before you, which I'm not certain have always been adequately considered. Thus, when you bring lawmakers to Israel, please make sure that they come out with the full picture. You may be critical of settlements. Many Israelis are. But if you choose to show the most extreme, it behooves you to present a greater mass of moderates as well. If you show them negative aspects of checkpoints, please show them as well the catastrophe and grief of terror victims. If you show them Israel failings, show them also our triumphs, such as the Aliyah from the Jewish community in Ethiopia and others. I urge you to strive for balance so that these lawmakers may become friends of Israel who might be critical and not critics of Israel who are no friends. I welcome the evolution of J Street's position, which brought about the recognition of the ultimate need to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear capabilities. I hope that this will be followed by adopting President Obama's policy that all options are on the table. Likewise, I welcome your position against one-sided resolutions on settlements, and I do hope and trust that you will not go back to opposing a veto cast by the Obama administration like you did, I'm afraid, on January of 2011. But I would like also to express our appreciation of J Street's active repudiation of BDS and of your activity on campus to help stem this insidious ideology. Our shared value in that respect, our shared view, in that respect, is that BDS is not a form of criticism, but a blatant, though veiled attack. I hope that the leaders of BDS movement will not be welcomed at J Street, and that all calls for boycott will continue to be refuted. They use such appearances as a means of gaining legitimacy, and whatever actually happens in such gatherings, in such meetings, they will report to their supporters that they were greeted at J Street with enthusiasm and consent. Please do not let yourselves be used. They are not honest players. Regarding Iran, this radical regime represents an unparalleled danger to world peace and to stability, and a very serious threat to Israel, as its leaders continue calling for our annihilation. For this regime to have nuclear military capability is simply unacceptable, and nuclear Iran cannot and will not be contained. Israel's position is very clear. We support the initiative led by the United States to take all possible measures in order to make sure that Iran gives up its nuclear military ambitions. We applaud President Obama's clarification that all elements of American power may be used, a political effort aimed in isolating Iran, a diplomatic effort, and this is a direct quote, a diplomatic effort to sustain our coalition, the US coalition, and ensure that the Iranian program is monitored, an economic effort that imposes crippling sanctions, and yes, said the President, a military effort. Our region indeed harbors forces of radical ideology, unwilling to accept our very existence as a free nation in our own country. And while we seek and pursue peace, as the old saying goes, the Ayatollahs of Iran call loudly for our annihilation. They seek to develop nuclear weapons and support terror groups in Lebanon and Gaza who attack us constantly and defy our right to exist. And regarding our peace policy, a vision that Israel was established with, it is the vision of our prophets, from Isaiah to Herzl. Without peace, our security will not be complete. But without security, there will be no real peace. The sands of the Arab Spring may go on shifting, but Israel remains committed to achieving peace with our Palestinian neighbors. We wish them well, yet our efforts to directly negotiate all issues are constantly thwarted by Palestinian rejection. We're willing to put all the contentious issues on the table in order to bring an end to the conflict. But time after time, we find out that the metaphoric table was removed or cut or blown up in the flames of terror. We urge the Palestinian leadership to lead their people in the arduous path of peace, as true leaders must do, and to forgo the game of the past, the game of hatred and virulent incitement. You know, it's not a game of political Quidditch that we play here. It is a heavy-duty selection of choices that we must make. A Hamas government is not a harbinger of peace, and neither is an Iranian-backed Hezbollah regime. However, the proof of the pudding, my friends, is in the eating. And so far we are fed primarily with the old, stale and hateful anti-Israeli and anti-Jewish slogans, as if nothing is happening. Over this weekend, I read the sober remarks of Judah Pearl in Yediot Ahronot, father of the late Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl. And he said, and I quote, "I grew up in Israel in a culture of peace and coexistence, but I do not see a hint of that on the other side. There is still no Palestinian leader," he said, "who can go back to his people with the words, 'end of conflict,' on his lips. And all that we want is an end to this conflict." So while we cling on to our quest for peace, we must be very careful and keep our shields up, especially when repressive regimes such as Iran's or Syria's continue to butcher their own citizenry, like in Tehran 2 years ago and like in Homs 2 days ago, especially when they go on spewing their venom, and especially when they strive to build a nuclear arsenal that might attempt, God forbid, to put an end to the Jewish question, this time in the Middle East. We are grateful for President Obama's statement that, and I quote, "When there are efforts to boycott or divest from Israel, we will stand against them. And whenever an effort is made to delegitimize the State of Israel, my administration has opposed them." We're just as appreciative of the United States administration's steadfast support in the Human Rights Council in Geneva and in other international fora, rebuffing one-sided and balanced resolutions on the settlements, and the United States' insistence on Palestinian return to the negotiating table. I am sure that you share with us this bond of special relations between Israel and the United States. I've mentioned some of the challenges that we face, but I come before you today, and you must understand it. I come before you today as the proud envoy of a cheerful and optimistic country. We should celebrate our tiny little country. You all know of our superb military, our research universities, our Nobel laureates, the contributions we make in science, health, and agrotech. How many of you know that, according to UNESCO figures, Israel ranks first alongside with the UK in number of new titles per capita per year? This is what we would like to do. We are still driven by the old flame, compelling us to exceed our potential. And this is the true essence and meaning of being a Zionist today. Friends, I urge you to stand by our side as Americans, as members of your community, as Jews, for the sake of our forefathers and for our future. We must keep our brotherhood and sisterhood strong. Thank you.
I've met Ambassador Bina a few times before, and I will say, Baruch, you give new meaning to the concept hard act to follow. On behalf of J Street, welcome to the third National Gala Dinner of the pro-Israel, pro-peace movement. Four years ago, a few of us in this room launched J Street because we wanted to give ourselves a voice in the political and communal debate in the United States over Israel. We wanted a voice that recognized that Israel's future depends on achieving a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We wanted a voice grounded in commitment to and love of Israel, but grounded in the Jewish values on which we were raised, grounded in the democratic values on which Israel was founded. We wanted to express our voice to say that being pro-Israel doesn't mean being anti-Palestinian. We wanted a voice that said a Palestinian state next to Israel is vitally necessary to ensure a secure, permanent national home of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And a voice that says to be pro-Israel doesn't mean agreeing with every policy of this Israeli government. A voice that says if we're going to keep the younger generation of Jewish Americans connected to Israel, then our relationship is going to have to be grounded squarely in our community's deeply held values. It cannot ignore them. We wanted a pro-Israel, pro-peace voice. And here we are today with 2,500 people at our third national conference, making this the third largest national gathering of Jews in the United States in 2012. I would say we have found our voice. Today, J Street has 180,000 supporters. We have chapters called Locals in 44 communities on 38 college campuses. We have 700 rabbis in our rabbinic cabinet. We have a staff of 50 in 9 cities around the country. It has been an inspiring 4 years. It's also been an inspiring 2.5 days for all of us who've been at the conference. Our theme this year is making history. And throughout the conference, we have emphasized that even as we face the reality that there is little movement toward peace, we have to step forward and act. Making history, as I said on opening night, means that it is up to us to take action if we want to change the course and if we are dissatisfied with the status quo. We know that the present we are living in is not the future that we want. But our choice is not to sit home and to wallow in despair. Our choice is not to bemoan the closing window of opportunity. We recognize that history does not record the inaction of those who stayed home. History belongs to those who stand up and do. History rewards those who see what is going wrong and work hard to make it right. This has been an energizing message for us these past couple of days, and I hope that this evening we will find ourselves energized as well, because we have a lot of work to do. Tomorrow, we are off to Capitol Hill for over 200 meetings, where we will be promoting the importance of renewed American commitment to diplomacy, both to achieve the two-state solution and to address the Iranian nuclear situation. These are critically important messages for our elected representatives to hear, and I want to acknowledge that tonight we are joined, and we have been at various points throughout the conference, by nearly 60 members of Congress and United States senators. A round of applause. To borrow a phrase that we've started to use, they are the legislative future of pro-Israel. They are willing to stand up for the cause of two states for two people. They are willing to stand up to help ensure a future for Israel that is democratic in character and Jewish in nature. I'd also like to acknowledge those who have served and do serve in the Israeli government. You've already heard from Ambassador Bina, and I want to thank him for his attendance on behalf of the government of Israel. As with all good families, we have our disagreements, but we also have what we have in common. And what we have in common is too important for us not to speak and, if necessary, to argue. That is the Jewish way. It is the spirit of our people. It should be part of the relationship between the American Jewish community and Israel. I also want to say a very special word of thanks to the members of Knesset who have joined us for the conference this week, and perhaps they could stand up for an acknowledgement. Members of Knesset, Avishai Braverman, Zahava Galon, and I'd like to acknowledge Amram Mitznah if he is here as well. We have been so fortunate to be joined by a whole range of Israeli civil society leaders, and of course it starts with our wonderful keynote speaker this evening, who is an inspiration to all of us, Anat Hoffman. I want to express my deep appreciation to former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert for agreeing to be our special guest speaker this evening. I want to welcome the range of ambassadors and diplomats in the audience, including my good friend, the Palestinian ambassador, Man Arakat. None of the work of the past 4 years and none of the work of the past few days would be possible without the hard work and the dedication and the leadership of J Street, starting with our board chair, Davidi, Gilo, who we are so honored to honor this evening, and the other members of the board and our national leadership. The names of all of our leaders and our sponsors this evening are in our program. I ask you to thank them all for their generosity. One final thank you before you get the green light to eat, and that is a thank you to the incredible staff of J Street. From those who have been with me from the very first day, like Corinne Luck, to the other senior staff, Dan Cole, Steve Krubener, Nan McNamara, Jessica Rosenblum, and Dylan Williams, to the entirety of our staff, but there are two people whose hard work I want to recognize in particular and ask you to acknowledge. Shira Frank, whose recent knee surgery, I don't know, may make it impractical. No, are you going to walk? Excellent. Up to the stage. Excellent. And who had coordinated our gala dinner. And Rachel Lerner, who has coordinated and managed this event for 3 years running. I'd like to ask Rachel to join me here on stage. And I'd like to invite you all to enjoy a wonderful dinner. Thank you very, very much.
At communal events, it is customary for clergy to offer an invocation before the meal. Sometimes that's overlooked or otherwise neglected. I recall being at a dinner that started without an invocation. Seated next to me was a Monsignor who picked at his food, clearly unhappy about the omission. I tried to set his mind at rest by telling him that in my tradition, the Jewish tradition, grace is said after the meal because we're not that trusting. Now, for those who custom it is that thanks be given the Creator before the meal, we invite you to offer the motzi at your table. And it is fitting for all of us to give thanks to all those whose labor brought this bread to us, the farmer, the miller, the baker, those who ferried the loaves, the workers in the kitchen, and the helpers at their table. B'te'avon.
ותראה שנצליח, אתה יכול לזכות, או תראה שנרוויח. יש מיליון מחשבות על מקום שנרגיש את החום ונזכור בו את היום, אצלך בסלון, אצלך בארון, מקום שנרגיש בו בבית. מתי יגיע היום נחיה את החלום ולא בדמיון, נעשה את המיליון, נספיק המון ועלה של זית, כי best of it. Sometimes they're too loose, sometimes they're too tight. Will I tie the noose upon my appetite? Hungry, hungry, to belong, hungry, hungry, to belong. Can I wear your jeans? Guess that's not my Mama's gonna say a little prayer. The mama's gonna get some masking tape and fix the hole in the ozone layer. Sleep, little angel, baby dove. Sun's gone down, it's getting late. Mama's got a chicken soup of love, for the bad old world is sick with hate.
אלו הם ימי חייך, הם מימי חייך נשטפים בזרם שמתחיל עם גשם ראשון. מי נהר זורמים מבט אלו הם פלגי המים שיגיעו אל מדבר גובע עם השקט שיבוא. גם אם אשתת כל הים הוא לא ירווה צימוני לעוד יום קרוב אליך, לעוד יום בזרועותיך. גם אם אשב מתחת שמש לא ישרפו אותי קרניה, כמו ליבי נשרף בלהבות אהבתך, כמו ליבי נשרף בלהבות אהבתך. מי נהר זורמים מבט אלו הם ימי חייך, הם מימי חייך נשטפים בזרם שמתחיל עם גשם ראשון. מי נהר זורמים מבט אלו הם פלגי המים שיגיעו אל מדבר גובע עם השקט שיבוא. גם אם אשתת כל הים הוא לא ירווה צימוני לעוד יום קרוב אליך, לעוד יום בזרועותיך. גם אם אשב מתחת שמש לא ישרפו אותי קרניה, כמו ליבי נשרף בלהבות אהבתך, כמו ליבי נשרף בלהבות אהבתך. מי נהר זורמים מבט אלו הם ימי חייך, הם מימי חייך נשטפים בזרם שמתחיל עם גשם ראשון.
תתארו לכם עולם יפה, פחות עצוב ממשהו ככה, ואנחנו שם הולכים עם שמש בכיסים ומעל גגות הכוכבים, והזמן עובר בלי פחד, ואני הולך לפגוש אותה בגן העדן. תתארו לכם קצת אושר, כי הוא כל כך נדיר כאן, עיר מגניבה בתוך החושך, ושנינו בסמיכה, והיא מלטפת אותי ואומרת לי מחר יקרה מה שרצית, ועם לאט השתקפויות של עצב ושמחה. תתארו לכם באמצע יום יפה, שמיים עליכם, אהבה איתכם, כן ככה זה קרה, לפתע היא אמרה, אני עוד זוכר אותה, כמו בסערה. תתארו לתוך זרועותיה. תתארו לכם עולם פשוט, חדר ללילה, בית בגשם, ריחות עצים מלאים בתות, ושנינו שיכורים. אם ניפרד אני אמות, היא לוחשת וגועשת. תתארו לכם עוד הזדמנות לחזור פתאום לנעורים. תתארו לכם את החיים זזים אחורה וקדימה, מה שחסר שהוא מתמלא, מה שהיה פתאום ישנו, ואני מביט לתוך עיניה ונגנב בכוח פנימה. תתארו לכם אותנו מגשימים את כל החלומות. תתארו לכם באמצע יום יפה, שמיים עליכם, הערבה איתכם, כן ככה זה קרה. לפתע היא אמרה, אני עוד זוכר אותה, כמו בסערה. תתארו לכם אותי נופל לתוך זרועותיה. תתארו לכם עולם יפה, פחות עצוב ממשהו ככה, ואנחנו שם הולכים עם שמש בכיסים. תתארו לכם עולם יפה, היא בתוך החושך, עולם פשוט, תתארו לכם קצת אושר.
מתי נמשיך לברוח אל משחקים של כוח? מותר לך לבכות לפעמים, כשמשהו נשבר בך בפנים. ספר לי קצת על רגעי הפחד. קל הרבה יותר לפחד ביחד, וכשרוחות קרות יסערו בחוץ, אשלח בך אש חמה. יום אחד אולי תפסיק לרוץ,
Ha! Shah! Isn't that beautiful? Silence. The peace treaty between Israel and Egypt was signed 33 years ago. What resulted was less than we hoped for, less than true peace. Still, in all these years, there's not been a war between those two nations, rather more of an uneasy truce. When we speak of peace between Israel and her neighbors, we hope for more than that. A mere absence of war is not synonymous with peace. Just an absence of sickness is not the same as health. There were celebrations of the Israel-Egypt Accord here in Washington in 1979. I was asked to sing at one of them. I sang a song I had last sung in bunkers and gun emplacements amid flying shrapnel. Now I sang it to celebrate peace in Hebrew and in English to Egyptians, Israelis, Jews, Arabs, Americans. I will sing it now, and I hope to sing it again when our efforts bear fruit.
אם נדע לאהוב, אז הבוקר יאור, ונשיר שיר חדש, אביבי ושיכור. אם נדע לאהוב, אז תחדול האיבה, כל דרכינו שלום, לילותינו שלווה. If we only have love, with our arms open wide, then the young and the old will stand at our side. If we only have love, love that's falling like rain, then the parched desert earth will grow green again. If we only have love for the hymn that we shout, for the song that we sing, then we'll have a way out. If we only have love, we can reach those in pain. We can heal all our wounds. We can use our own names. If we only have love, we can melt all the guns and then good the new world to our daughters and sons. If we only have love, then Jerusalem stands, and then death has no shadow. There are no foreign lands. If we only have love, we will never bow down. We'll be tall as the pines, neither heroes nor clowns. If we only have love, then we'll only be men, and we'll drink from the grail to be born once again. Then with nothing at all but the little we are, we'll have conquered all time, all space, the sun and the stars.
There isn't a single day that I don't wake up with a sense of being involved in a miracle, of being a rabbi here in Jerusalem. But as a religious Zionist, I feel incredibly blessed that my children have grown up in Israel and that Israel is part of our lives.
I love the fact that Israel has been a tremendous and wonderful, inspiring project.
Somebody who lost his brother in the war in '73, somebody who raises his children here. I don't think that there's any better place on earth than Israel. What we have been able to create here in some 60 years is a miracle.
The essence of the miracle of Israel is that it's a Jewish democratic state.
Israel is at a very important juncture today, and the core issue here is the question of war and peace, and what kind of country we will be in the future.
Behind me is the Rabin Square. On the 4th of November 1995, Rabin was assassinated here with 3 shots at his back. This is a place where Israeli right-wing forces tried to kill the peace process. But what Rabin and Peres have started in '93 is stronger than any assassin.
I served as a brigade commander in Gaza Strip, and then as the head of peace administration under 4 Israeli prime ministers. I really believe that the only way to preserve Israel's secure, democratic and Jewish state is by achieve a peace agreement with the Palestinians.
We must divide between the two entities, the Palestinian state and the state of Israel. Otherwise, we will be in a combination which is hopeless. It will lead to a non-Jewish majority and the end of Zionism.
It's not a Palestinian issue. It's a Jewish issue.
If we don't achieve the two-state solution, I'm afraid that my daughter will grow up in a much more segregated, much more violent, much less democratic, of course, less peaceful Israel.
To support Israel today means to support Israel to get out of the occupied territories, because we can't go on like this. You know how many more children need to die? I paid a really high price for what I'm saying. You see, it's so easy for people in America not to compromise. Their children aren't standing at a roadblock every day.
Not in 10 years from now, not in 20 years from now, if we will not reach the two-state solution in the very near future.
We slowly become a binational state, which is not why I and other people have arrived to this country.
We used to be 12 tribes. We're still separated in many parties, ideas, differences, but we're still one people. And I believe that the same right that Israelis have to criticize their government is not only part of democracy, it's part of the Jewish tradition. And I believe that Jews all over the world has the right to think and to say loud and clear what they are thinking.
You can support Israel, you can love Israel, and you can also criticize the policy of the Israeli government.
I'm considering myself a moderate right-winger. I support the state of Israel, and I do not necessarily support the government of Israel. Hey, I'm going to vote against it coming next election.
The whole of Jewish intellectual power is based on debate, on difference, on argument. And I see no reason why there shouldn't be 2 different voices within the Jewish community in the U.S.
We need world Jewry telling us Israelis, please come to your senses.
But what's worrisome, and that's something you definitely feel among the young people, is that time is running out.
Last summer, we protested for a new way of social justice in Israel. The same voices needs to be raised up now for a peace agreement with the Palestinians.
I think finding peace is crucial, and I believe that the only way to do peace is to divide our country.
I think we need to find a two-state solution as soon as possible. There is absolute urgency.
Two-state solution is necessary for Israel.
We have a huge political spectrum from very left to very right, and every voice is heard. This is a time for Americans as well to go and lobby their Congress, their senator, whoever they need to do, and make their voice heard.
We need you, the American Jews, to speak out and to speak very clear and support the idea of two-state solution.
Peace is a core value of Judaism. Human rights and human dignity is a value of Judaism. And therefore we have to get together all good forces inside Israel, outside Israel, Jews and non-Jews. If you want to do what is right, that is what is right. Those who are friends of the Jewish state, they have to help us achieve a two-state solution. We know what the solution is. So So let's just get up and do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Gala co-chair, Yafa Maritz.
And you are all very lucky I'm not going to sing. It's my great pleasure to introduce today Davidi Gilo, my dear friend, my mentor, J Street founder and the chair of the board. But does Davidi really need an introduction? Yesterday, when I spoke to one of my colleagues from Israel and I asked her if she ever met Davidi, she said to me, no, I have not met him personally, but of course I know who he is because in Israel everybody knows Davidi. Well, it's a small country, only 7 million people. People often ask, can news ever be about doing good? Well, in Davidi's case, it sure is. In Israel, Davidi's name is synonymous with the pro-Israel, pro-peace, pro-democracy movement. This is a man who truly walks the talk. In his youth, even prior to his bar mitzvah, Davidi was a community organizer way before it was fashionable to be a community organizer in Israel. Then he went on to protest the occupation in 1969. He's still a kid, which did not stop him from later volunteering to an elite unit in the army and serving as an officer. As soon as he finished his service in the army, he resumed his political activities, organizing protests against the First Lebanon War, and in the wake of Sabra and Shatila massacres, organized the national demonstration calling for the resignation of then Defense Minister Ariel Sharon. To this day, Davidi has a sharp shrapnel in his body from the grenade thrown at the demonstration that killed Emil Greenswag. Just as he had an early understanding that the occupation must be stopped, Davidi also quickly saw the dangers posed by the settlement enterprise. So he spearheaded a nonviolent resistance movement to settlement construction during the Begin government. As you can see, he was a very busy young man. Almost any organization in Israel which has a social and political justice and fairness as its core mission has Davidi's name written all over it. I'll give you just a few examples. Ashalim, a project for early child education of Israeli Arabs. Another one in education is Hand in Hand. I don't know if some of you heard about it. It's a growing school. It's an award-winning bilingual Hebrew-Arabic schools where Jewish and Arab Israeli children aged 5 and up can study together in a multicultural setting. NGT is the first business partnership between Israeli, Jewish, and Arab businessmen in Nazareth, and culminating in the Gilo Center for Democracy at Hebrew University, which educates university students and high school teachers towards the very democratic principles so necessary to a vibrant Jewish homeland. And that's just to name few. Davidi has been a successful entrepreneur both in US and Israel and is widely considered one of the fathers of the Israeli high-tech industry. But he is not the one who Occupy Wall Street movement resents, because he is probably one of the most generous philanthropists in Israeli history, as it was recently reported by the Israeli Business Journal. Davidi is who I think about when I hear the poet David White calling us to engage in the courageous conversation. To paraphrase David White, courageous conversation, These conversations do take great courage because they are so real. And because they are real, we risk our very own carefully crafted identity whenever we are courageous enough to engage. What is a conversation? Every human life and every organization has a central conversation for which it was made. Staying close to that conversation, especially amid the rising demands to cave in and follow the consensus, or the rising fear of potential criticism and slander, takes a form of personal discipline and one might even say personal mastery. The ability to return to the central conversation and then to follow it, inviting others to engage with it, no matter the outward difficulty, seems to be an essential ingredient in human happiness and fulfillment, and tellingly in the success of any organization. You all have heard the distinguished guests we had here, Amos Oz and Amram Mitzna, saying to us, J Street, you are the one we have been waiting for all these years. I want to thank Davidi for holding us to these higher standards of staying the course of this courageous conversation and for helping our collective dream come true. Davidi, please come to the stage. Join me.
נעשה את זה קצר. You all did.
This is the Tzedek V'Shalom Award, which means the Justice and Peace Award, and I am so pleased to present it for our third time to our board chair, Davidi, Gilo.
Thank you.
And it
I
falls
got
apart.
instruction not to touch it.
I know, that's, no.
Wow.
Okay,
I got instruction not to touch it, so I don't. Good evening. Thank you, Yafa, for the kind word. I spent the last 25 years taking ideas, dream, innovation, and building technology companies around them. Most of those companies were based both in Israel and in the United States. And their success were capitalized on the strength of both places. Most of the company were pure startup. Young people came up with ideas to take on the establishment, changing the way people behave. Some of those companies fought monopolies. Others helped us see the world differently. 5 years ago, Jeremy and Daniel came to me with the idea of creating J Street. They were looking for a seed capital. As in technology, the risk was high. Many early attempts to establish an effective, progressive, pro-Israel, pro-peace voice in Washington has fallen short. I started demonstrating against Israel's occupation of Judea and Samaria when I was 14 years old. Few years after the '67 war. I continue in the early '80s with the Peace Now, and since then I backed many other initiatives, including the Geneva Initiative, Ayalon and Nusseibeh, and others. In America, I supported the Israel Policy Forum and was early founder of the Jewish Peace Lobby in the '90s, because I realized that the road to peace has to pass through Washington, as it did in the first Camp David. Standing here tonight, 5 years after my first meeting with Jeremy and Daniel, at the end of energizing conference, I can say without hesitation that the decision to support J Street 5 years ago was one of my best investments. The return on this investment is infinite. I wish I could duplicate this kind of explosive growth in the business world. 5 years ago, I could not have imagined tonight. We are holding our third national conference with more than 2,500 attendees. We are the largest pro-peace, pro-Israel political action committee in Washington. And we are changing the political discourse among American Jews. Thanks to J Street, they are no longer a monopoly on our voice here in Washington and across the country. As in business, monopoly will put up a hard fight not to lose a market share. As in business, with a good message, effective organization, and with the wind at our back, even stronger monopolies succumb. Last year, Daniel and I visited campuses on the West Coast. Looking at where we are today and what we have accomplished, two things make me particularly happy. One is seeing the young generation, 650 students from over 125 campuses. Yeah. Across our country, finding home for the humanistic value and the love for Israel. No longer do these two things as to be in contradiction. You are our future, not only the future of Israel, but also the future of our community here. I love the young generation. The second thing I see is that what we have created together is not another Jewish organization. We are creating a movement. 44 local across the country. There is a J call in Europe. There is big support for us in Israel, as we saw in this movie. This movement is changing the face of American Jewish community and will establish new contract between Israel and the world Jewry. A contract based on love for Israel with emphasis on real Israeli security, and at the same time, we ask to be treated as partner, that our voice will be counted and will be included in the dialogue on the future of our homeland. It is spectacular to be here in this room with all of you. J Street in many ways my home, and it's always wonderful to be at home among friends. Before I start the thank you, I want to thank President Obama and the White House for sending two of his most senior staff, Valerie Jarrett and Tony Blinken, to speak to us today. I want to thank the entire J Street staff for putting all the hours and all the effort of putting this tremendous event. 2,500 attendees, more than 45 sessions, training, movie screening, book signing, plenaries, and the gala. I especially want to thank my friend Jeremy Ben-Ami. As in technology investment, you bet on the leader of the team. Jeremy, what you created here in such a short time and the team that you built around you is nothing short of a miracle. I'm very proud to be your partner. I want to thank all my fellow board members, the President Council, and everyone who supports J Street, whether it's in this room or elsewhere. We are all as good as the support we receive from each other, and I'm always moved and impressed by the dedication of everyone at all levels to achieve our goal together. I want to thank my family and friends who made long trip to attend tonight, to my loving wife Ruth, to my wonderful kids, Adi, Elad, and Yael, and to Shamaya, special thanks for helping arranging the event, and to all my dear, dear friends, thank you very much for your support and love. You make big difference in my life. Thank you. The people of J Street, whether it's Jeremy or the board, or people holding house meeting back home or students on campus, we are all in this struggle for a single purpose, to make history. We know that the need to negotiate two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinian people has never been more urgent, and it will take all our effort to ensure that the American government does all it can to achieve that goal. I am proud to be a member of our organization and so very grateful for this award. Thank you all. Now, let me introduce our guest speaker, Ehud Olmert, my friend, and I know each other for well over a decade. Israel is a small place, and we have mutual friends, and Ehud helped me in various initiatives that I supported when he was in various government positions. We have not always been on the same side of the political fence, though. I've been protesting the occupation since '69, where Ehud was born into a family of strong supporters of the vision of Greater Israel, a vision he carried him into politics. But we must be clear, Ehud and I shared similar dedication to the health and well-being of the Jewish homeland. Ehud devoted his life to Israel, going into politics, serving years as Jerusalem deputy mayor, then joining Prime Minister Ariel Sharon government, and then leading the country as the Prime Minister himself. These are actions of a man for whom the future of Israel is of primary importance. After the Second Intifada, it cleared to me that Ehud came to a new understanding of what it would take to truly secure Israel's Jewish and democratic future. Much to the surprise and often great worry of his fellow political traveler, Ehud began to talk openly about two-state solution. He was the first minister in Ariel Sharon government to talk about withdrawal from Gaza and part of the West Bank in his speech at Ben-Gurion grave, I think in 2004. Three or four, yeah. Occupation was clearly destroying Israel from within, and Ehud further recognized the harsh demographic truth. If Israel wanted to remain Jewish and democratic homeland, the dream of greater Israel could not be realized. I think we sometimes underestimate the enormity of this kind of paradigm shift. For someone who was raised in the home driven by the teaching of Zev Jabotinsky, to say we have to give up land represents almost a bombshell of thought. And in this, Ehud thinking reflects that of a lot of people in this room. Many of us once thought a different approach to peace and security was possible, but when faced with reality, didn't look away, instead choosing to embrace the need to end the conflict and pursue such agreement as the best possible expression of our dedication to Israel. And Ehud has not stopped working for that goal since. As he wrote in the New York Times recently, Israelis simply do not have the luxury of spending more time postponing a solution. Now it's the time. There will be no better one. I will bring him up here in just a minute, but first I want to say just one more thing. Ehud is famously married to a wonderful woman, Alyssa, and a father of 5 children who have long been to the left of him politically. In Israel, those things happened. As we sit here in this room, surrounded by like thinkers, preparing to lobby on the Hill tomorrow, and then go home to our family and communities, where many people may still fear the very idea of negotiation. Think about the Olmert family. Think about power of love and respect. Think about the power we have to change the way our family and our community talk about Israel and the conflict. If we want to make history, that's the only way we'll be able to do it, by winning over who may not yet see what we see. I'm grateful to Ehud Olmert for his leadership on the question of two-state solution and deeply admire his courage and conviction. We are honored to have him here tonight. Please welcome Ehud Olmert.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Davidi, Chairman of J Street, Mr. Jeremy Ben-Ami, President of the organization, the Honorable Baruch Bina, Deputy Ambassador of the State of Israel in Washington, and the official representative of the Israeli government in this event. I think that the presence of an official representative of the government of the State of Israel in this event is an historic landmark in the life of the Jewish community in this country. And I think that I presume, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, I presume that some of you may have not agreed with everything that Mr. Bina said. That is not important. You are entitled to your opinion. He is entitled to represent the government opinion. Everything is in the family. The fact that the government decided to send him is the most important thing. And this is very significant. I also want to recognize the presence of the former mayor of Haifa and chairman of the Labour Party, and the acting mayor of Yerucham, a voluntary acting mayor of Yerucham, and a good personal friend of mine, Amram Mitzna, and a former minister of the government and a member of the Knesset and the former president of Ben-Gurion University, Professor Avishai Braverman. Distinguished guests representing so many different communities in so many parts of this great country. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to this event. I'm honored. I think that what somewhat aggravated me about this invitation, wait, you don't know yet what I'm going to say. What aggravated me about was the response or the reaction. Well, obviously there were those who didn't like it. They mailed me, they emailed my wife. They said, why does he have to be there? Or, you know, what does he have to do with J Street? That is natural. You know, you have to accept it. It's part of life. There are divisions in Israel, there are divisions here. It's natural. I was somewhat aggravated by the fact that there were those who congratulated me for accepting the invitation. What is there to be congratulated for? J Street is a legitimate organization which cares for the state of Israel, which is dedicated to the well-being of the state of Israel, and this is the most important thing about J Street. We can agree with everything that is said here. We may also sometimes disagree with certain things. I'll tell you a secret, but just between us, okay? We disagree a lot in Israel, amongst us, about what should be done, how it should be done, who should do it, how he should do it, and so on and so forth. So if we're entitled to have disagreements, why are you not entitled to have disagreements? For what? In as long as you really care and genuinely care, as you are, for the state of Israel and for its future existence as a Jewish state, democratic and Jewish state. And there is no one who deserves more to be recognized and honored than my dear friend, Davidi Gilo. You know, when I was asked by some, by the way, well-wishers, not my enemies, not people who are hostile to me, but people who care, wrongly, but, you know, it happens. What do you have to do with this organization? I said, any organization that Davidi Gilo is the chairman of is an organization that they are proud to have association with. It was mentioned before, you know, that it is easier for people that live away from us to criticize, to suggest, to have an opinion, and so on and so forth. Davidi Gilo grew up in the battlefields of Israel's effort to protect itself. There he grew up. There he developed. Fighting, risking his life, exposing himself to the hatred and misunderstanding of others, and yet at the same time not losing a sense of balance as to what we have to do in order to live in peace in the Middle East alongside our neighbors and to protect the existence of the State of Israel. That's why he deserves to be honored by you, as he was, and I appreciate the fact that you had manifested this respect for this great man, Davidi Gilo. I know that had I stopped here and I had stepped down, he would have said, "You only came to say what you think about Davidi Gilo." The truth is that this is a good reason. But since I'm here anyway, I want to share with you my thoughts about a couple of things which are on your agenda and which are very much on my agenda, which I think are on the agenda of the State of Israel, maybe also on the international community. And let me start somewhat in a different order than you have proposed in some of the statements that you made. One of the main issues which presently preoccupy the international community and also the international narrative and the discussions between my country and the United States is the situation in Iran. I want to be very explicit and very straightforward. I entirely agree with those who believe that Israel can't tolerate a nuclear Iran. This is not a normal situation. We are not talking about a country which possesses nuclear weapons because of regional problems or potential confrontations with neighbors, as, for instance, the case with Pakistan or others. We're talking about a nation which openly, formally, and officially talks about writing Israel off the map. No country, other country, which possesses nuclear weapon talks about the liquidation of the State of Israel as a primary objective, except for Iran. So there is no question in my mind. There was not when I was Prime Minister, in charge of the security and the well-being of the State of Israel, that Israel will not be able to tolerate nuclear Iran. We have to accept it. From then on, we have to ask ourselves how to deal with it. And my first suggestion, as I tried to do with all the challenges that I had to face at the time when I was Prime Minister, is to be cool. Okay, to examine it, to analyze it, and to deal with it in a very balanced and determined but balanced manner. It has been said many times, and I entirely agree, that Iran is not just a challenge to Israel. It's a challenge to the democratic world. It's a challenge to Europe. It's a challenge to America. And therefore, all of us have to act together. And Israel doesn't have to be the leader of all the world when there are countries like America and Europe that can lead the way and show the direction and use the necessary means which are essential in order to stop Iran from being nuclear. Israel will definitely be a part of this effort. We are a part of this effort. It's been said time and again that the less we talk about it, the better it is. It's true. So why do we talk about it all the time? We don't have to talk about it all the time. Israel can do, did, and will do within the context of the international effort what needs to be done. But the lead should be the lead of the superpowers which have the capacities, which have the influence, and which have the means in order to bring the result, the outcome, which is essential for them and for us, for a peaceful future. And they know how to do it. And I think that in the recent actions taken by the United States, or under the leadership of President Obama, in order to stop or to disengage Iran from the banking system of the world, is one major step forward in the direction which should be adopted by the international community, and I trust that other measures will be taken that will ultimately bring the outcome that we are longing for. No options should be ruled out. And Israel also has to build the capacities to deal with this situation in the event that we will have to, in order to secure the very existence of the State of Israel. As a last resort, not as the first one. I don't think that I have to say more. I want to also relate to what has been known over the last year as the Arab Spring. I wish that I was confident that I could say that there will be an Arab summer. I'm not certain about it. On the one hand, the fact that many people, innocent people, couldn't continue to tolerate the lack of democracy, the suppression of human rights in those extremist Arab regimes, and they expressed their discontent and eventually brought down the governments, in itself is a very positive development. Yet at the same time, no one can ignore the fact that there is a high probability that the next phase will be the emergence of radical forces. They may take over, maybe in a democratic way, but ultimately in a fashion that will bring back those countries into dark days of non-democracy, suppression of human rights, extremism, fundamentalism, and aggression of the worst possible kind. We have witnessed it in Iran. There was a revolution in Iran. The revolution was inspired primarily by the lack of democracy that so many people felt. The outcome is not very positive. The question is, what will happen in Egypt, in Yemen, in Libya? Already we have some negative signs in Tunisia, where the fundamentalist party took over. I understand what people say when they don't want military confrontations and violence in the streets of those countries. But I also understand those who are afraid that the radical movements will take over some of these countries and will eventually impose restrictions that will upset the basic fundamental values of democracy and equality and freedom of speech and civil rights, which we all cherish so much. So it's a process. You have to follow it with great care and concern, and hope very much that it will develop in the direction that will strengthen the democratic forces in those countries, particularly in those countries who are neighboring Israel and who made peace with Israel. And first and foremost is Egypt. Egypt is an important country for the security and the future of the State of Israel. We pray, we hope, we'll do everything that we can to build up friendly and peaceful relations with Egypt, and we hope that at the end of the day, the forces that will take over democratically in Egypt will look at the same direction, with the same attitude, and with the same spirit and inspiration that will continue to build these relations with the State of Israel. One of the main contributions to this development in our relations with Egypt, also in our relations with Jordan, there is a big difference, by the way, which I'm sure you have noticed, between the countries which were dominated by secular leaders and countries that were dominated by royalties. Strangely enough, the legitimacy that was projected by the countries which are dominated by kings preserved and protected the governments. In countries, regardless of whether they are symbols of democracy or not, in countries which were dominated by governments of regular human beings, the situation was different. It's interesting. I don't know what conclusions we can draw, but we can't escape this sign, which is very steady and very consistent. There was not one rebellion in a country which is dominated by a king. There are rebellions in almost all the others. Interesting. Now, what can we do in order to affect and to influence the development that we are interested in? There is one, other than the building of greater cooperation with some of those countries, particularly with Jordan and with Egypt, which we tried to do over the years. We made many agreements with Egypt and Jordan. We created the qualified industrial zones, which were very helpful in creating many thousands of jobs for people in those countries. We built up the economic cooperations. We tried to create a better understanding and cooperation on security matters, which was very helpful. But the one thing which will change the atmosphere in the Middle East fundamentally is peace between us and the Palestinians. This is the primary responsibility of the State of Israel. Now, I want, before I go slightly deeper into this, I want to share with you, if I may, you will forgive me, one thought, which I think is of some significance. I think it will be fair to say that the responsibility and the prospect of making peace is not exclusively on the side of the State of Israel. Naturally, when I argue within the State of Israel with my partners and my adversaries, I talk about our responsibility. But when we try to look at the entire picture, no one should and can relieve the Palestinians of their responsibilities. And they have responsibilities, and they don't always meet their responsibilities, and this has to be mentioned if we want to be fair to the issue and to ourselves and to our future. I know that I could maybe, I'm not certain, don't blame me. I just wonder, maybe I could even receive a standing ovation from you had I said that this is our fault, that we are guilty, that we didn't do enough, that they are all right, that we are wrong. You will excuse me. I have dealt with it. I spent more time and more efforts, that I can say, than any other prime minister in the history of the State of Israel, meeting with Palestinian leaders in order to establish a two-state solution. I met with Abu Mazen 36 times, 4 hours each time, in 4 eyes. I don't know of any prime minister in the history of the State of Israel we met with Arab leaders consistently for 3 years, so many times, for so many hours, to discuss one thing: a two-state solution that will bring an end to the conflict between us and the Palestinians and will create peace that will secure more than anything else the future and the security of the State of Israel. I proposed the following to the Palestinians. I thought then, and I think now, that there is no alternative to what I proposed. And one day, and I pray as all of you do, one day, when we will celebrate peace with the Palestinians, this peace will be identical to what I proposed to Abu Mazen, finally, formally and officially, on the 16th of September 2008. The borders of the State of Israel and the Palestinian state will be based on the 67 lines. They will not be identical. They will not be identical because there will be swaps between us and them. But they will be based on the 67 lines. By the way, can I say in brackets, when I was arguing with President Abu Mazen, by the way, I want to say it, and without an argument. I don't want to argue with anyone, not with you, not with the Israeli government. You know, I respect the government of Israel. I seldom argue with the Israeli government when I'm in Israel. I certainly don't want to argue with the Israeli government while I'm here. That doesn't mean that I agree with what the government says or does. But, you know, if I want, I have the opportunity to argue with them there. But one thing I want to say, there is a partner. Don't tell me that there is no partner. There is a partner. Abu Mazen, President Mahmoud Abbas, never said that he supports terror. He was against terror while Arafat was in charge. He was against terror afterwards. He was in favor of peace and peace negotiations while Arik Sharon was prime minister, while I was prime minister, and to this day he is in favor of peace. Perhaps not the same peace that the majority of us want, maybe somewhat different. It's legitimate. That's why we negotiate. When we negotiate, we may come to terms. But no one can say to me, after hundreds of hours of discussing this with Abu Mazen, that he is not a partner because he doesn't want peace. He wants peace with Israel, and he accepts the existence of Israel as Israel declares itself to be. And I don't need Abu Mazen to make declarations about the nature of the State of Israel. If there will be peace between Israel and the Palestinians, then there will be a Palestinian state, and there will be Israel as a Jewish democratic state, whether the declare it or whether they don't declare it, it will be our state as a Jewish state, and that will be it. As I said, number one, based on the 67 borders. Number two, here I want to say in a very careful manner, it's been published, it's not new, but still, every time I speak about it, I must admit, my heart beats faster. I'm talking about Jerusalem. I've been the mayor for 10 years. By the way, Davidi, I was deputy only one time in my life. I was deputy prime minister or vice prime minister. I never was deputy mayor of Jerusalem. But I was mayor for 10 long years. Not an easy job. Maybe more difficult than being prime minister. Because when you are mayor of Jerusalem, you still depend on the government. And in most cases, do you know one mayor who likes the government? I don't. So it's not easy. I learned one thing. If we talk about the lifelong dreams of the Jewish people, if you talk about the prayers of 2,000 years of the Jewish people, if you talk about the history of our people, we always dreamt of coming back to Jerusalem. When we dreamt of coming back to Zion, it was to Jerusalem. It wasn't to Ra'anana. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Let's not fool ourselves only because it may fit in now with the present political circumstances. We dreamt about one thing, returning back to Jerusalem. And there was no one who expressed it in a more powerful manner than David Ben-Gurion on the 5th of December 1949, when the United Nations was about to adopt a resolution of internationalizing Jerusalem, that Ben-Gurion said there was not a nation in the history of mankind which kept loyalty to its capital city more than the Jewish people to Jerusalem. This is not something that can be waived and ignored and be forgotten. No. But I also found out, over the period that I was the mayor of this city, that the gap between the dream and the reality of life on a day-to-day basis is unacceptable. It is impossible to live in the same city with 500,000 people who are privileged to have all the benefits and advantages of what the city can offer, and 300,000 or 250,000 who are not in the same level, to put it mildly. Now, if that couldn't be accomplished in Jerusalem, which is the most important city in the state of Israel, how could we seriously think that we can have all the territories and keep them in democracy and provide equal rights to the people that live there if we can't do it even in Jerusalem, which is the capital of the state of Israel? And that has led me to the inevitable conclusion that we have to keep the Jewish neighborhoods and to allow the Palestinians to have their capital in the other parts of Jerusalem, which is the Arab neighborhoods. Third, not easy at all. Easier to talk about it. Easier to discuss it in conventions, in conferences. But my friends, when you are the Prime Minister of the Jewish people, of the State of Israel, and you're talking on behalf of Jewish history, and you sit with the representative of the Palestinians and you talk about the holy places, you should have a sense of humbleness and humility and modesty. And I don't have to tell you that for an Israeli to adopt modesty is not the easiest task. It wasn't easy. It was heartbreaking. And I said it to Abu Mazen. It breaks my heart. It really was one of the most difficult moments of my life. To sit in front of the president of the Palestinians and to say to him, okay, on behalf of the State of Israel, I suggest that there will be no sovereignty over the Holy Basin and the Temple Mount. Not yours and not ours. Don't take it lightly and do me a favor. Don't applaud. Cry with me. But understand that for a Jew to offer this is possible only if you reach the inevitable conclusion that if you want to live in peace and to secure the future of the Jewish people in the State of Israel as an independent, democratic Jewish state, this is an inevitable conclusion that you have to make. And I proposed it. The Holy Basin and the Temple Mount will be administered by 5 nations: Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Palestinians, Israel, and America. And I also proposed to resolve the issue of the refugees within the framework of the Arab Peace Initiative. I don't want to go into details now because it will take us too much longer than planned in advance, and I don't want to make use of your tolerance. But those who say that Israel did not recognize or did not address itself to the Arab Peace Initiative are not saying the truth. In November of 2007 in Annapolis, I declared on behalf of the State of Israel and the government of Israel that enjoyed an overwhelming majority in Parliament that Israel is prepared to negotiate the issue of the refugees within the context and within the framework of the Arab Peace Initiative. And then, of course, were security issues, the nature of the Palestinian state. Palestinians agreed that it will not be militarized, that they will only have law enforcement forces, and so on and so forth. I don't want to go into details. This package was offered officially by me as the Prime Minister of Israel to the Palestinians. I think that this is the basis for peace. I think that it will be the peace that ultimately will be signed between us and the Palestinians. I pray to God that it will be sooner than later. I pray that the Palestinians will never say no to this plan, but unfortunately never said yes to this plan, will have the courage, the creativity, and the inspiration to come forward in order to accept this. And I definitely pray to God that the leadership of the Jewish people and the State of Israel will have the courage and the flexibility needed in order to depart from the dogmas of the past into the challenges of the future, and propose this and accept it and move forward. Now, I want to say one thing at the end. You're Americans. I'm not in a position to tell you what to do towards your government. This is something that you have to decide amongst yourself. As an Israeli, I will not ask you to go to your government and tell your government, go to the Israeli government and tell them what to do. For two reasons. Number one, I don't think that this is my duty to tell you how to deal with your government. And number two, which is more important, is this the challenge of the American government? This is my interest. This is the interest of the State of Israel. This is the interest of the Jewish people, that we will be the ones that move forward in order to make peace, because time is running out for us, not for them. We need this peace more than anyone else. We want to make sure that we will not be faced sooner than later with a situation that will threaten the foundations of the State of Israel, when we will be forced to recognize a one state for two people with equal rights, and then when we will lose the majority in the State of Israel, it will cease to be what it was destined to be in the first place. And therefore, time is running for us. I don't need no one from America or from anyone else to tell me what I need to do for myself, my people, my children, my grandchildren, and the future people of the State of Israel. I have to do it. I want to thank you, as I said at the beginning, for inviting me. The most important, for the fact that you are ready to invest your time, your resources, your energies, your emotions, your love, your concern for our future. Our future, at the end of the day, is your future. We are together. We may disagree, and occasionally when I hear sometimes statements made by J Street people, not necessarily by the movement, not necessarily by the official representatives, but by people, you know, I disagree. As I disagree with some statements made by my own party people in the State of Israel, and I'm a proud member of Kadima, and I am certain that Kadima will be the alternative to the government in Israel, because this is the largest party and it will be supported regardless of who is in power there, and it will take over sooner than later from the government of Israel. This is my belief. I was one of the founders of this party, and I brought it into victory in 2006, and I helped it in 2009. But what we do, we will do in Israel. What you do in America, we bless you and we thank you for what you do. We will continue to listen to you. You will continue to listen to us, and forever we will remain united. Thank you very much.
All that remains for me to say is Laila Tov, and we hope to meet again next year at this time in greater strength, in greater numbers, and with joy, with fun. Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Good night.
Thank you for attending this evening's gala. Running on Jewish Standard Time, we have exceeded our welcome in the ballroom. At this time, we kindly and strongly encourage you to exit the ballroom.